Operations and Environmental Policy Director for HUT. And with me is Kyle Husky, who is the Capital Planning Manager for LOTT as well. So we have reviewed the draft, Planning Commission's recommended draft, and have just a couple of things that we wanted to point out. LOTT does have some projects planned on our long-term capital improvements plan that involve primarily pipelines and associated infrastructure such as pumping capability. And just wanted to kind of let you know how these relate to the draft as it's there. Major one is replacement of a portion of our north outfall. Through most of that's through the port industrial area, but a portion of that would reaches the north end of the Port Peninsula, which would be in urban conservancy area. Now the requirements all seem to be for that and in many other categories, simply shoreline permits, basically. And you know, we're perfectly familiar with those processes and have no hesitancy about working through those. So we don't see that project as being potentially a problem at all the way this is currently worded. There is one area of potential concern involving the urban conservancy designations along the west side of Capitol Lake, and in particular in the areas that are labeled as Cap 5 and Cap 4. And Table 6.6, which is on page 73 of the draft, indicates that all utility structures and transmission lines are prohibited. That's a bit of a challenge. We already have pipelines in those areas, of course, going down to Chutes Parkway. Specifically 2 lines. We have a 22-inch sewer line and a 20-inch reclaimed water pipeline that already go through those areas. And we do have one project on our long-term CIP that will involve, and I do have a memo here that will pass it around as well, that involves a booster pump station, which would be co-located with the existing City of Olympia pump station, the Flying Marathon Park there. That was designed with sufficient space so that when we were ready to add our booster pumping for the reclaimed water lines, that we would be able to incorporate that in there. We also have long-term plans for some additional pipeline work to convey reclaimed water south. And that could, we don't know what pipeline routings are going to be for that yet. So it's really premature to be very specific on that, but one of the alternatives could be putting another pipeline down the Chutes Parkway. So this particular category of prohibiting those is something of a concern to us because it would certainly close off options to doing that. Pam, do you have anything?
Also add that the city has lines in that same area, and there probably will be a need to rehabilitate and replace something in the future and potentially expand. So I think prohibit essentially public facilities might be one move.
So the memorandum that we have for you from our executive director, Mike Struve, who could not be here this evening, just basically conveys what we just talked about, and ask that as you consider the plan that you look at designations that wouldn't preclude the alternatives for these projects in the future.
Great. Thanks, Carla and Kyle. So, are there any brief questions for Carla or Kyle? And you get extra points for only using half your allotted time. And very helpful points. So thanks for joining us this evening, and thanks also for the details.
Thank you.
All right. So next, State Department of Enterprise Services.
thank you for inviting us to comment and to review the plan. I'm Carrie Martin, and I'm an asset manager with Enterprise Services, and I've been working with Capital Lake and Dam, and Michael Van Gelder is one of our senior planners. In January of 2011, our director, Joyce Turner, sent our comments in and submitted those for your consideration. And at that time, there were three main areas where we wanted to make some comments. One on the dredging in the Capital Lake Basin. Since any of the potential management, long-term management plans for the lake would include some amount of dredging, we wanted to put that forward as a possible need for some clarification there. The June draft did include verbiage on Capital Lake in the dredging section, so we wanted to thank you for that piece. We mentioned the restoration projects that were in the plan. Included adding aquatic and riparian plantings along Chute Parkway, some of which have been done. We don't have any plans for additional ones or funding for that currently, but would certainly continue to make good faith efforts in that area, as well as on the second restoration project, which was the eradication of the New Zealand mud snails. Nothing we can guarantee on that, but we'll continue to work on that one. The third point was just the recreational facilities. In addition to the Lake and Dam, Enterprise Services manages parks, Heritage Park, Marathon Park, Interpretive Center, and wanted to make sure that however the SMP goes, that we would have the ability to continue to maintain those facilities, to repair and restore them as needed, and possibly to look at future development that's appropriate for that area. So I have additional copies of that letter if anyone needs copies of those, and we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions for our Department of Enterprise Service partners? So I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening, and thanks for the confirmation regarding your issues and interests as reflected in the draft. All right, great. So next, I'd like to invite State Department of Natural Resources.
Cox with the Department of Natural Resources, and I'd like to thank you for working with Hugo Flores and working on this draft and balancing between our mandates of fostering water-dependent uses, public use and access, environmental protection, and sustaining renewable resources. And one comment that we have is to try to focus on not allowing new non-water dependent uses in the water. And that's it from the department.
Great. Thanks, Neil, for joining us. And let me just check with council, see if there's any questions for Neil this evening. All right. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate your being here. And that brings us to the Port of Olympia. I'm not sure who's presenting tonight, but I do want to acknowledge all of the port commissioners, and you're certainly welcome to join us at the table if you'd like. I'm very grateful for the Port Commission taking the time this evening, and we're looking forward to our ongoing conversation. I'm hoping that we can make a good dent tonight in hearing the port's positive vision for the shoreline. And let's see how the conversation goes tonight, and of course, if we need additional time to figure that out.
Honorable Mayor, thank you, and council members, we really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. We brought about half the court, but not to worry. I think we can score extra points since you're handing them out, because I don't think we'll need the entire hour, but thank you so much for the time allotment. We appreciate it. With my commission's pleasure, and Commissioner Davis, who's currently serving as president of the commission, will speak on behalf of the commission. We'd like to give you an overview. We have a very brief slide presentation to give some background and comments, and then we'll turn it over to Commissioner Davis. And to start the presentation, introduce Mike Reed, who is our Senior Manager of Property and Business Development. So I will turn it over to Mike.
I'll stop right here. And then I have a clicker, and I just point somebody to click to the next slide. Or I can click. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, council members. Appreciate this opportunity. I may just want to start out just trying to defuse the situation or address the elephant in the room. I think that it's been sort of obvious or clear that there's been some growing Port has articulated some growing challenges with the SMP and sort of where it's gone and so on and so forth. And I just want to thank you first and foremost for providing the opportunity for us to be able to address that. I really think that by the end of the presentation and by the end, hopefully, of this discussion, that we'll be able to see where those opportunities to resolve and find a positive outcome in this really lay. And I do want to address part of the frustration, I think, on our part has been we've been using the methods and means necessary to involve ourselves in this process. I can tell you personally, I attended numerous planning commission meetings and subcommittee meetings and so on and so forth. We provided a great deal of correspondence through letters, public hearing testimony. We even did a walking tour with the planning commission to show them really on the ground what we're talking about. The planning commission draft of the SMP that you have in front of you, I think really missed a lot of that. I think that, in fact, I know we were heard because we got sort of feedback of thank you for participating, but it was clear that we weren't listened to. And so that's the challenge of what has caused, I think, some of the commission members and staff to feel that there is some ground to make up here, to make sure that we can get to a right and good place. So I just wanted to address that, and hopefully we can find a way to move forward. So with that, I will hop right into it. So the port has a plan for the waterfront, and that plan is actually in your adopted, currently existing comp plan. That's on page 69. The plan was created in 1995. Now the district names may have changed and the boundaries may have changed, but essentially the plan remains the same. And that plan would have development along the waterfront. In this drawing, this is actually taken from the comp plan as I was able to find just a couple of days ago on your website. It shows obviously continued development along the waterfront. You will see in our next slide here, we have our planning documents as well. We have a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements and property development guidelines, both of which can be found on our website. When you take these two planning documents that we have, a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements and our property development guidelines, they essentially become the port's land use plan in terms of what we are identifying for a plan for our properties down along the waterfront and at the Port Peninsula. Our property development guidelines, they go through and they talk about the intent and the character and the use anticipated in each individual district. Our comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement identifies those districts and the district boundaries and their locations. You can see we have North Point and Swantown Boat Works and the Market District and so on. So if you want in-depth information concerning that, you can actually find those there. This is just a series of the correspondence that we've had thus far. And this is just truly the on-the-record sort of testimony that we've provided either through written correspondence or public hearings. I do have, if anybody wants them, I have all of these letters that I'm referencing here in a nice, neat little packet that you can take with you if you'd like. But really, just to sort of fly through these at a very high level, June 24th, the very first one, it's just an introduction to the port. It talks about the ports and all ports' relation to the Shoreline Management Act. It talks about how ports are a preferred waterfront user in the Shoreline Management Act. And it talks about our specific interests in this SMP update. We then, on August 10th, we made a clear ask, if you will, for a port maritime industrial designation. It is a separate designation that doesn't exist. At the time, it did not exist in the TRPC draft or the staff draft that had been written. You'll see that we got part of the way there in the Planning Commission draft, but not all the way there. We had the current draft, there is a port industrial designation. It sort of leaves off the maritime component and only shows that usage for half of the port peninsula. That letter also articulates, it's got a table or a chart, if you will, that's modeled very similar after the TRPC sort of layout that shows these are the acceptable uses, heights, setbacks, and so on and so forth. So that's also in this pack if people would want that. August 11th, we went back through setbacks and modifications. We even touched a bit on the relation between critical areas ordinances and the Shoreline Management Plan, or Shoreline Master Program Update, Shoreline Management Act. January 6th and 7th was actually comments and letters that were submitted concerning the staff plan and the public hearing related to that. Those comments were similar to what was addressed in the previous letters. May 27th was when it was brought to our attention that the City Council had decided to move the SMP from the Planning Commission for you to take the task of this update. So we wanted to provide an update, so we resubmitted our 624 letter that was intended to be the introductory letter. On July 12th of this year, we provided at a Port Commission meeting that a few of you had attended some questions that were really used, the intention of those were to help guide you as you were taking on this new task of updating the Shoreline Master Program, some questions that we thought might help you when you were addressing the port section. Questions such as, what is the intent of an urban conservancy designation on a port property? So you could ask that of maybe the previous planning commission. Why did they do those things? What was the outcome? We've got those questions here. And then finally, on September 20th, we submitted a letter, a pretty big packet actually, that had some flyers and promotional materials that we had used when we took the Planning Commission for a waterfront tour of the port properties. So I think that if you have these, and we'll provide them again, it will give you a clear picture. It's, I know it is a fair amount of reading. In comparison to the whole record that I think that you guys were given, it's not that bad, but it's all there. Moving into one of the port's primary objectives is to provide waterfront access, public access, and amenities on the waterfront. And I think that's something that you're looking to accomplish as well, or at least that's what we've seen in this in the Planning Commission's draft. Currently, the port maintains 9,600 linear feet of shoreline. Over 70% of that is maintained to a park-like setting at the port's expense. That is not maintained at cities. So we are providing an East Bay trail that runs from East Bay Drive all the way up to KGY Radio. It is an extremely nice trail if you have not walked it. There are pocket parks along the way that provide rest areas. There's a public restroom at the north portion of the East Bay Trail. We also do maintain some of the public areas and walkways that do connect all the districts from the East Bay Plaza through the farmers market and throughout the area. So this is actually a map from a promotional piece that we do have that if you'd like, we'd be happy to share that with you. And it's a promotional piece that we've given to the Visitors Convention Bureau and other places in the area for them to be able to direct people to some of the amenities that our downtown and waterfront provide. These are some conceptual drawings that were actually done in 2003, I believe, and this comes almost to the heart of what would be at risk if the plan before you was adopted as is. The upland development there does not currently exist. That is a potential Swantown marina village. It would be a commerce and retail center aimed at a boating community. It is in line with the appropriate uses that the Army Corps of Engineers has dictated on that property. You may be aware, but that upland property there was created through fill, so there is an Army Corps 404 permit that dictates the types of uses that can be there. We can share that with you, but this type of development fulfills that obligation there. This could also contemplate a fuel dock in that area, also would be at jeopardy with an urban conservancy designation. This is...
Can I interrupt for
Yes.
a second? I'm confused, but
Could you use the phone?
I think I have it.
This is a good, helpful question.
I am confused by your, this picture here.
Yes.
Where is that green area with all the trees in current day? What is that really?
That's actually where,
KGY?
that's where we've actually...
That's KGY.
That's actually where we've had to put the cap. So this was done, this drawing was done before we had to do the cascade full capping.
But I mean, where is KGY on?
KGY would be at the very north point, so we can see if we come back to this one.
Uh-huh.
So KGY is at the very top,
And your green space
and my
is
green
where?
and my green space is sort of in between the two dots. But this drawing that you're seeing is not intended to highlight the green spot. It's intended to highlight the potential development. A sort of a blank space they've got there. That is now the Cascade Pool cap, where we had to put the parking lot.
Yes. The large parking lot.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
the green area on the right-hand corner is where the commuter was.
Yes. I got it. It just looks so completely
Oh,
different than,
thank you.
you know, what we see today, so.
Sure.
I just was trying to orient myself. Thank you.
And then this is the southern portion of the marina. These docks here do not currently exist, but have been planned for a while. This would be the M, N, and O docks. This would also be a new public or guest moorage dock. This would be a public gathering space, a restaurant pad, additional restroom facilities, and then this building does not exist either, but it would be an expansion of the boatworks operations in this area. So essentially, if we come to this next one, and this is a little bit hard because it gets a little squished, but these yellow lines, your first yellow line is or orange line is your East Bay Trail. The second one is what a 30-foot setback looks like. And you can see, you know, it's pretty much the East Bay Trail. The next one is 100 feet, and you start taking a significant swath, especially out of this area here, and then really into the boatworks operations. And then a 200-foot, which you know, urban conservancy is the 200-foot area, takes out a lot of that planning. And also, additionally, this is the cap that we were talking about here. That has to remain in perpetuity due to Department of Ecology. It is a cleanup facility for addressing the cascade pool cleanup. So it's a pump and treat system there that we simply cannot have that be non-conforming, as it has to exist as long as we need to be addressing that contamination issue. So if something were to go wrong with it, we have to be able to get in there to fix it, or we would be out of compliance. So to start, we noticed that the last discussion was what's the vision of the waterfront, and I think at the meeting that you had with the different agencies and sort of organizations back 2 weeks ago, I don't think that our vision was dramatically different than what you had heard there, and that was continue to provide great public access via the trail and pocket parks, continue the legacy of maritime and commerce industry, create economic opportunities and reasons for everybody to enjoy the waterfront, and finally make Olympia's waterfront a premier boating destination. I think that that's relatively in line with what has been discussed thus far. So with that, I'm going to ask Alex Smith, our environmental program director, to give a little bit of a discussion on the Shoreline Management Act and ports, how they're addressed in that SMA. So with that, Alex.
Just wanted to say, I'm Alex Smith, the Director of Environmental Programs, and reiterate our thanks for having us here to talk about this tonight. Wanted to present this information because it informs it's sort of the lens through which the Port of Olympia looks at the Shoreline Master Program process. And the big picture is the Shoreline Management Act, by its own language and how courts have interpreted it, it does not prohibit development, very clearly doesn't do that. Instead it says you have to be coordinated in how you plan for development on the waterfront. And in that context, there are certain preferred uses, or actually they're called priority uses in the Shoreline Management Act. And ports are one of those, and we put up some of the statutory citations up there. And the Shoreline Management Act does that because they're doing it in recognition of certain statutory authorities and mandates that ports have. So ports, one of the recognitions is ports, maritime ports at least, can only be located on the water. There's sort of the very definition of a water-dependent use, especially for shipping first, but also for our boatworks and marina. Ports are governments with comprehensive planning powers. But in particular, ports have a mandate to construct, operate, and maintain harbor improvements. So that's one of the statutory items in Chapter 53 of our CW. Ports also can directly manage state-owned aquatic lands under port management agreements with the Department of Natural Resources. And the Port of Olympia does have a PMA, and we directly manage some state-owned aquatic lands. And also, ports provide economic development, which if you look in the Shoreline Management Act, that's one of the things that it says the Act is supposed to foster, is economic development of appropriate waterfront uses. But it also says that cities are required, as they develop their shoreline master programs, to ensure that their master programs are consistent with harbor area statutes, regulations, and port plans. So when the port is coming at this process, it sees two ways in which there needs to be some consistency with the port's plans. The first is this particular regulation, but then there's also the mandate of the Shoreline Management Act that a shoreline master program has to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And as Mike pointed out earlier, the city's comprehensive plan actually includes the Port of Olympia's land use plans, its comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. So that's the approach that the Port of Olympia is coming at this from. So with all due respect to the other governments in the room, ports aren't the same as other governments when it comes to this particular process. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, we have yet another speaker to turn it over to just talk a little bit about what the port is looking for and how other jurisdictions have approached this port-city dynamic as they process their SMPs.
Questions from council at this point? Good. Thank you.
For the record, Timothy Harris, on behalf of the Goodstein Law Group, on behalf of the court. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because this is exactly what we've been asking for since 2010, letter of August 2010, is the designation of the port and the entire Port Peninsula as a port, maritime, and industrial area. 6 of those areas are currently urban conservancy, are troubling. 0 to 30-foot setbacks, 0 foot along the marine terminal, 30 foot where it is now, where we have a trail along the Swantown Marina area on the east side of the port, with uses that are compatible with the port's plan, simply to let the port be a port, let the port pursue economic development activity along the waterfront. This is not, obviously we are not unique. There's a lot of jurisdictions across the state have come across these issues. And here's how, I pulled some examples of how some other jurisdictions what they've done. Anacortes has an urban maritime district with 0 to 25-foot buffers, depending on what the area is being used for. Port Townsend has a boat haven marina and marine trade district with 0 to 25-foot buffers. Vancouver is a high-intensity designation, 0-foot buffers for commercial uses and 25 feet for marinas. Really not that different from what we're asking for here. We're asking basically to maintain the status quo, for a designation that's consistent with our published plans, what's found in our development guidelines, as well as in the scheme of harbor improvements. It's all in the record, and it's all in the city's comprehensive plan. So what we're asking for is a simple special
designation because the port is special. That allows the port to operate as it has done. And with that, I'll open up for any questions and then we'll turn it over to the commissioners.
Questions for council? So I actually, you piqued my interest. All of these seem like they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Curious about Port of Tacoma though, where is the 50-foot setback?
You know, I don't have a map. I'm happy to get that to you.
You
but
know,
it is,
I think we can look it up, but
yeah.
I'm just curious about the 50-foot setback for the Port of Tacoma.
I think there are certainly, I think it's more closer to the Puyallup River where that flows into the tide flat. I think that's where the 50-foot setback is.
So might be part of the tideline management
Right.
plan for, yeah, okay.
Exactly. I almost hesitated because they haven't been approved by ecology yet. They're still in the process, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
No,
Since
just
it's
curious, just caught
close.
my eye. I
Yeah.
appreciate your pulling these comparisons together.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. So thank you. Good, all right.
Thanks,
We'll turn it over to Commissioner Davis.
Mayor Bucksbaum and City Council members, thank you. I'm Jeff Davis, President of the Port Commission, and I think I'm going to speak on behalf of the other two commissioners that are here today. You know, this has been an issue that we've shown somewhat of a timeline that has been a concern for us at the port. The port being able to manage its assets accordingly, in our opinion, is in jeopardy here. The setbacks that have been proposed from the Planning Council, the Planning Committee to bring the proposal forward, do put us in danger as far as some of the things that we can do from a port's perspective. Now, in looking at history, I can understand this perhaps if we weren't a good manager, a good steward of the community, but I look at past things that we've done from a commission, which preceded me and also during my tenure as a commissioner here, and I can say that I see nothing but good things that we've done specifically for the city of Olympia and also for the county. But just to highlight some of the things that they pertain to the Port Peninsula, you know, I look at some of the noise abatement issues that we've taken on from, you know, the community being concerned about some of the noises that have come down there, and we've certainly taken great strides to make sure that those issues have gone away. Light has been another issue that some of the community members have taken on, and we've certainly taken great strides to make sure that the lighting that happens down at the Marine Terminal not just doesn't throw a lot of light pollution up into the air, but moreover, we've even restructured the way we do operations down at the Marine Terminal to accommodate some of those things, to abate some of the noise and light issues that have been down there. From an environmental standpoint, and you know, I thank staff very much in the preceding commissions for doing this, but there's been considerable amount of investment that's been taken on in the peninsula area itself, taking what was basically an uninhabitable area from a brownfield and turn it into a productive area to where not just the public can enjoy, but also we can bring the type of economic development that we hope to see in the future. And I say hope because you obviously know about a couple different vacant lots down here that aren't necessarily impacted by the shoreline issues, shoreline proposals, but certainly as far as trying to be a steward of the area itself and to accommodate the general public, I think that the port has definitely shown that we are willing to work with the public, willing to work with the city to see what we can do to make that happen. As far as the partnerships that we've done with the city as well, you know, I look at the hands-on museum, farmers market. These are two efforts that I think were huge. You know, I was quoted as saying that it was the jewel of Olympia, and I'll still stand by that. But the fact is we look at the growing constraints of the Marine Terminal right now, it's kind of funny that we say, gosh, we kind of look at that property, and it was a decision that was based on the time, but now we're trying to figure out what we're going to do because we need more space. Now, certainly I'm not going to suggest that we're going to take away anything, but the decisions that are made today and decisions that were made back then were based on information we had. And I guess I would ask, let's take a long-term view at this. Let's look at this area and decide what it is that we would like to see, not just for the citizens of Olympia, but moreover for the port as well, to do the type of economic development that we're hoping to do. The visions that were brought out here regarding the Swantown market area, I think is what we've dubbed it, is something that I'm incredibly excited to bring forward. I think it would be a tremendous addition, not just to the port, but more to the city and even the citizens of Thurston County and even the citizens of Washington State. The question is whether or not we're going to be able to do that or not. And a lot of this is hinging simply upon the setbacks that are currently standing out there. From a Marine Terminal standpoint, I think there's a lot of issues, and I don't think that they're going to be as deconstructive as some of the proposals are going to be brought forward. I'm hoping that we can look at that objectively and say, actually, this is a tremendous economic driver for the community. and the state. So as we look at these setbacks simply from the East Bay perspective, I would ask that you look at the visions that we have currently and say that, is this what it is that we need for the area? At the end of the day, I think it's up to us three commissioners to direct staff to do what it is that we feel is going to be best for the port. I mean, that's what we are here for, is to represent the citizens and say that this is what is going to be best for the port, and under the RCWs of Section 53 to say, what does economic development mean for the area? That's what we're trying to do. And that's what we're trying to do, not just for the port, but moreover for the citizens of Thurston County. So with that, I am always, as well, the other two commissioners are always welcome to receive any questions and talk about this at any given time. I think that we are more than just a special interest here. We're a stakeholder in this. And the decisions that you are going to be making regarding the shoreline master plan have the potential of doing some tremendous impacts on the way we do growth for the port and for the city of Olympia. So we ask you to take those into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I do want to defer if there's any other comments on the port side.
That concludes it. Thank you again. You've
Okay.
been very generous with your time and appreciate it.
Something and then I have a couple of comments as well. So.
Okay, well,
You don't
questions?
mind. We have time, right?
Absolutely. We'll make
Remember,
time.
there's extra points though.
Won't be small.
Yeah, but I just, if you don't mind, Bill, if I can just see any questions from council at this point? I do have a couple of questions, but I think, why don't we hear all your comments first and then come back around.
Well, thank you very much for the chance to run my mouth, and I intend to do that because I have serious thoughts about what's before the council and the outcome from those decisions. The other evening at the meeting downstairs, passed out a form that asked people to comment and tell you what they thought. And a couple of the questions were, give us your ideas of what would be done different. Well, two things that jumped out at me from the presentation and having read the document, I would say it would be advisable from the port's point of view to drop the designation of urban conservancy, because that works hardship on the port and other people who may want to invest in the waterfront of the Olympia downtown. Likewise, I would say drop the designation of non-conforming use. I think it's a knife in the heart of local businesses and the Olympia Yacht Club for however long until it were changed. The port is both a shipping and receiving facility for commerce and business, as well as an environmental management agency doing cleanup of historically polluted port property. And also we are uniquely situated to dredge major portions of the floor of Butt Inlet. Now, we did a small dredge about 3 years ago. I was a new commissioner, and I spent a lot of time down there watching the dredge contractor do his thing. And I spent afternoons with the State Department of Ecology assigned staff person to observe the operation. He told me he'd been on 45 different dredges, and it was the most pristine and cleanest he'd ever seen. So I was real proud of the job we did. And that's the kind of thing I think we're going to do in the future. We did successfully complete the Cascade cleanup. Spent, I don't know, maybe about $30 million in about 8-9 years, because I was on the Board of Commissioners of the county when that whole thing got going. I remember standing down there with Jolene Unsold and a lot of local people and saying, this is going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. It did, but it's done, and we did it, and we're proud. We're happy. Everybody else should be proud and happy as well. And we bit the bullet and got it done. The Port Commissioners are elected countywide. We are responsible to the citizens of the whole county, not just Olympia, even though we're called the Port of Olympia. I've always thought it ought to be the Port of Thurston County because we're trying to benefit the whole county. we spend our tax monies on environmental cleanup and deferring county bonds. We don't use any tax dollars on operations, on the overhead of the port. So I think that's a statement about our commitment to environmental cleanup and management. I guess I'd be coming along behind Commissioner Davis about the risk we took on the farmers market. But we did give East Bay redevelopment to the city of Olympia with a free, you didn't have to spend a dime on that trail. That's a freebie. Then we got jumped on because we were doing near-shore development. Nobody came and told us before, set it back the trail from the short line. I mean, that may be a bit of boo-boo, but it's a beautiful facility, and I go down there and walk around and talk to people who are walking there, and they're real pleased it's there. And that's available to the whole city and the whole region. In town, out-of-towners who come here, maybe come in on their pleasure boats. Those folks are dropping about $100 a day in Olympia as they stay here. And, you know, they're here to shop and eat, relax, whatever. So we're trying to be partners infusing economic vibrancy into the community. We are presently in discussions with the possible of a 5-star hotel here on State Street, which would be another shot in the arm for the city of Olympia. I mean, the port isn't going to use all those people who stay here. They're going to be coming to Olympia, not the port. So we're just facilitating money centers. I think that's reasonable. All I guess I was going to say was Swanton Marina brings a lot of pleasure boaters to the Olympia waterfront. And I was down there last week to the Swanton Boatworks asking people from wherever, they weren't Thurston County residents, what they thought of the boatworks. I didn't get one person who gave me any kind of negative comment about anything. They were just saying, wow, this is great. The staff is great, the facilities are great, access to the community is great. We like coming here. We think you ought to put that fuel dock in. It's going to mean more boaters are going to come here and are going to stay here. And if we get the other marinas slips built, we'll have more moorage for people to come and sit here. Plus, the people that live on their boats, they go to the farmers market in downtown Olympia to shop. I mean, they're your residents. I quit.
Yeah.
Now I'm just a little passionate.
I hear you. I feel it. Well, I won't go over what the other two commissioners have so eloquently put out there, but I will like to reinforce that I agree wholeheartedly with what they've said. I think the Planning Commission, as Mike relayed to you, heard us in the letter but didn't listen to what we were trying to say. I think that our letter of 9 on September 20th, I think the third paragraph is fairly strong in what we believe we should have out there in the way of setbacks and designation, because we, as has been said, we do represent all of Thurston County, and as we develop, all of Thurston County benefits from this, and in particular the city of Olympia benefits from the taxes and the money that are spent locally, but it also ripples out into the rest of the county. So I won't go on because I want to get as many extra points as possible here, but I think the setbacks that are in the existing one today are unrealistic and really seriously impact what future benefits we can bring to this community. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much for your comments. Council member questions? And of course, this isn't a decision-making meeting for us tonight. You know, it's really a meeting, as are all work sessions or study sessions, an opportunity for us to collect information and have some good back and forth discussion. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Buxbaum. I just wanted to ask Mr. Reed to make sure to pass out his packets since he went to the work to get them ready, and it'd be nice to have those in front of us.
Like, right now?
So that sounds good, and thank you for going to all the trouble to put the packets together. So I just have a couple of clarifying questions that I'm hoping will be helpful for us as we go along. the Swantown Village, I don't know if it's possible to go back to that rendering. Thanks, Jeff, that's great. So just to put things in proportion for us a little bit, I'm curious about the, and I understand this is a rendering. It's not a plan as such, or it's not an architectural plan or an engineering plan at this point. But in terms of the concept here, how high are the village buildings?
I don't think that at this point in time it really articulates that, and our, frankly, our development guidelines that we have don't articulate heights. We've looked towards your documents and your zoning essentially to do that. So I think that these are drawn to the scale or contemplated with the scale of whatever the currently existing regulations were. This was done in 2003, so I would assume that what you see here, and here would be in compliance with what is, well, I'm assuming it's what's currently on the books.
35 feet.
Yeah. Is it 40 and then 72? Or something like that, 62?
Yeah, and that's something that I think that we'll want staff to clarify for us. So and I appreciate actually you sort of saw where I was going in terms of on the heights and
Sure.
how we do overlays on heights in this area. So that's helpful. My thought is that the existing boatworks facility, which is the large, that one, exactly, that's the one that's currently there.
That exists.
Now, that's 65 feet?
Boy, off the top of my head, I do not know the height on that
Seems
building.
like that's higher than 35 feet.
It's 50 feet.
50 feet? Okay. So I think we have a confirmation from staff that it's likely 50 feet.
Okay.
Now, but going back to the Swantown Village, if you don't mind clicking back to that slide. Now, what's absent in this rendering is the existing boatworks, or not boatworks, it's the boathouse.
Yes.
So the boathouse is in that area, that's right. Essentially would be off in the trees there, just to the right of the transient moorage dock. And that is 40 feet?
I'm pretty sure that's 40 feet, and that I believe is the height restrictions out there.
Okay, so the boathouse would have been conforming to the height.
Correct.
And so those are the existing heights for this area, is what is reflected in the boathouse.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Now, and my recollection is that the height that was used for placement of the boathouse continues down all along Swantown. Right, okay.
Yeah, the zoning in the area remains consistent. I mean, you have an urban waterfront zoning on this entire area on this eastern side of the peninsula. Actually, the entire peninsula is urban waterfront.
Yeah, well, there's a break right before Boatworks. In Boatworks, there's a different overlay, I believe.
Okay.
According to the city spreadsheet, Boatworks is 40 feet high.
Okay.
And there's no specific recommendation.
Okay, so Boatworks, and that was the
That was right,
facility
the one-
down to the south.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so that's helpful to place this in context in terms of what you're looking at. And you're not asking, I don't recollect in the packets that we've got, looking back over your request, heights are not an issue at this stage in terms of what you're looking at.
Well, what we've done is, it is the letter that will be dated August 10th. It does have a chart in there. It will look like this. And it does, essentially, it takes what was then being called high intensity, we've renamed it to urban intensity. In a lot of ways, this Port Maritime Industrial designation is very similar to the urban intensity or high intensity designation. You can see in some instances, that there might be some minor alterations, but the heights are consistent with what was being then proposed. I believe it was TRPC's proposal that we were working off of. So that the heights are consistent with what TRPC had been recommending. So.
All right,
Yeah.
great, okay.
Yeah, there are no non-conforming use issues with the heights. At present, it's all the setbacks.
And we just had a further comment that wouldn't have made on the, made it on the recording or the audio version, that there isn't any non-conforming height restriction. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I appreciate the clarification. So, Councilmember Hankins.
Could you go back to the first two renderings really quick?
These?
Yes, I
Okay.
just want to double check. What are you, is that armored shoreline? What are you doing with that? I just thought from this picture.
You know, to be honest with you, I think that this is just the shoreline as it is right now to sort of show that there is a break between the water and then the upland. There is no contemplated plans to create an armored shoreline at East Bay.
And all the way down and around?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We do have, just so you're aware, it's something that we will just have to address, and well, I'll show you on this one. If you do walk this trail down here, right along here, there's significant sloughing that is starting to occur.
Right.
That will just have to be addressed, or we're gonna start, at some point in time, losing the amenity of the trail and then eventually the road. So there is going to have to, at some point in time, be some way to address either reinforcing that. But at this point in time, it is not a capital project that we're working on right now.
Yeah, and actually, so what was being pointed out on the picture was the outfall of Moxley Creek in the very southernmost tip of East Bay. And for those of us, I think we've all walked this several times at this point. But I think that is an area of concern for us in terms of just making sure that we retain some